You ever bought a cheap grinder because the price looked right, only to end up with uneven shots, clumpy espresso, and that lingering feeling that you just threw money down the drain? I've been there more than once, and the regret sticks around longer than any caffeine buzz. That's why I wanted to see if a higher-end machine like the rocket Espresso Faustino 3.1 can actually save you from that headache and feel like a smarter buy. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about what makes an espresso grinder worth worrying about in the first place. In the espresso world, the grind isn't just a grind, it's the bridge between bean and crema. A grinder that can consistently hit the same particle size, douse the right amount of coffee, and stay cool enough not to roast the beans mid-grind is the holy grail for anyone who takes their shot seriously. Most entry-level grinders either rely on stepped adjustments that jump you from one size to another, or they're so noisy they make you want to grind at midnight and hope no one hears. Those trade-offs are the real pain points that push people toward either cheap disappointment or the I'll just buy a fancy machine and skip the grinder route. The Faustino 3.1 lands squarely in the middle of that dilemma. It's built in Italy, so you get a sense of craftsmanship you don't see in many mass-produced units. The 50mm flat burrs are the centerpiece. They're larger than the typical 40mm burrs you find on home-grade machines, which means they can process more beans per pass and keep the grind temperature lower. In practice, that translates to a steadier extraction. I was able to pull a shot after the grinder cooled down, and the taste profile didn't shift after the third pull, something I've noticed with cheaper units that start to taste burnt after a few minutes of use. One of the most talked about features is the single revolution, stepless adjustment. Unlike stepped grinders that force you to choose between fine or extra fine, the Faustino lets you turn the dial and feel a continuous, frictionless change. For a home barista who experiments with different beans, roast levels, or even wants to dial in a specific brew ratio, that level of granularity is priceless. I tried a light Ethiopian and a dark Brazilian on the same day. The grind changed smoothly enough that I didn't have to stop and recalibrate the machine, just a quick tweak of the knob and the DAW stayed spot on. Speaking of dose, the programmable dosing is where the Faustino really earns its premium badge. You set the timer once, and the grinder spits out the exact amount you programmed each time. In my kitchen, that meant no more guessing whether 18 grams of coffee actually landed in the portafilter, and no more "I think I'm overdosing" moments that lead to bitter, over-extracted espresso. The repeatability is especially useful if you're juggling multiple beans for a tasting session. You set the dose for the first bean, switch beans, and the machine remembers the exact timing for each. No need to manually count seconds every single pull. Now, let's get into the practical strengths that actually matter when you're grinding daily. First, the noise level is lower than I expected for a 50mm flat burr machine. It's not whisper quiet, but it's far from the whine you hear from smaller conical grinders that feel like a kitchen appliance on a power tool setting. That makes it tolerable for early morning pulls without waking the entire house. Second, the heat management is decent. Because the burrs are larger, each bean spends less time in contact, so the motor doesn't heat up as quickly. Over a 30-minute session, the temperature stayed stable enough that my espresso didn't develop that cooked flavor you sometimes notice with cheaper grinders that overheat. On the flip side, the Faustino isn't without its trade-offs. The price point is a clear barrier. This isn't a budget upgrade, it's an investment that sits comfortably in the high three-figure range. If you're a casual espresso drinker who enjoys a good shot once a week, that cost might feel like overkill. The single revolution design also means you have to pull.